Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we've got an update for Ukraine. Haven't done one of these in a while, so I'm going to follow the Institute of the Study of War for the Russian Offensive Campaign Assessment to get an up-to-date picture of what's going on, guys. We're going to do a little bit of a map study and we're going to do some reading. So let's get straight into it, guys. Before we do, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And let's get into it, guys. Nice and simple format today. So first things first, this is up to date as of the February 19th. So yesterday, it's normally a day or two behind, but that doesn't really matter, guys, too much, okay? Now, the major phase of Russian offensive operations in the Luhansk Oblast is underway, and Russia likely lacks sufficient uncommitted reserves to dramatically increase the scale or intensity of the offensive this winter. So what does that mean for Russia? Well, it's simple, really, guys. If you haven't got the ability to rearm yourself with troops and weaponry, then you can't really sustain a certain type of war fighting. Now, you might be able to defend certain areas a little bit, but you're certainly not going to be able to go on the offense, okay, and try and dominate and take land. So, yeah, numbers and reserves and committed individuals to the Russian military has always been a problem. It always was going to be a problem with the amount of people who are against the war anywhere over there. They don't want to be fighting for little money and stuff, so that was always going to be a problem, guys. Now, Russian conventional ground forces are generally deploying and fighting in normal doctrine formations, which is, I'm not going to say it's unusual, but we have seen them fighting out of unconventional doctrine formations, okay? The normal doctrine formations pertaining to Russia's way of doing things is actually quite old, though. The way they do things hasn't really changed too much for, the past couple of generations. We've seen that, how they actually utilize and deploy their troops on the ground. So let's not utilize that phrase and compare it to, for instance, Ukrainian doctrine fighting, and covering the war in a style and fashion that NATO would see fit, and units rather than in a battalion, tactical groups, or other ad hoc structures. So, yeah, the observed absence of several critical tank units suggests that Russian military continues to struggle to replace equipment. When they have been able to replace equipment, they've replaced it with old, archaic kind of military. All right, some of the stuff that they've been utilizing on the ground has been, 20, 30, 40 plus years old. Hasn't been looked after either. It's one thing having something in the military that's 20, 30 years old. In the British military, we have Land Rovers that were used in Iraq, for instance, and even before that. But we look after our kit and equipment very, very well, okay? It's a real strict, stringent maintenance program that the British military has and upkeeps all the time. So we might have old stuff, but it still works, and we have the ability to fix it if and when needed. Not the same for Russia. They've obviously, for generations, neglected some of the kit, most of the kit that they already have. So even if it's good, all right, and if it's new, it's gonna degrade if you're not going to look after it, guys. This is just Billy basic stuff. Now, especially tanks. They've neglected these. Now, loss during previous failed offensive operations, you're going to get that in any war on both sides, all right? You're going to lose hardware. Russian forces almost certainly still have some reconstituted mechanized units in reserve, but the commitment of these limited reserves to the Luhansk Oblast front line is unlikely to change the course of the ongoing offensive dramatically. Now, ISW has been quite accurate with these assessments, guys. The information that comes out of here is fantastic. So I urge you to go follow these. Okay, it's really, really good information. Now, the Russian offensive will very likely continue for some time and may temporarily gain momentum as the final reserves are committed. This is the key, guys. Listen to this. All right, really take note of this part. It may seem as if, once they commit their reserve troops, that they're getting a little bit of a reinvigorated of life into them, a little bit more energetic. It seems like they're getting a little bit of momentum within certain key areas, but be honest with your thoughts, okay? When reserves are committed, you're going to see an influx of troops, so it's going to have somewhat an effect on the battle space. Okay, now it's all about a test and adjust phase. You have to be able to see what they're going to commit, to be able to then in turn commit your own troops strategically, place them where needed. So that's going to have a little bit of time. These pawn chips on the battlefield, it doesn't happen overnight. Strategically thinking, all right, the mines and the powers that be, these things take a couple of weeks in some cases to respond to. So yes, if final reserves are committed in certain areas, you're going to see Russia get a little bit of momentum, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to win the war. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to dominate that land. It just means that they might get a foothold in, but we need to readjust, test and adjust, and commit our troops according to whatever Russia does. There's no point in committing to what we think might happen, okay, because then it just might not. All right, we've seen how those wars are fought in previous wars, okay, but if they are, but will very likely culminate well short of his objectives and likely short of achieving operationally significant gains, which we've just mentioned there, troops. So let's look at this then. Really interesting, this. Now, the current pattern of commitment in Luhansk Oblast indicates that Russian forces in this area are deploying in doctrinal units and formations from the military district level down to the brigade regiment level at least, and likely down to the battalion level as well. We've seen Russia fight this war in various different ways, okay, but it seems as if they're trying to organize themselves at least better than what they have done in the past few months, certainly at the beginning of the war, to be able to sustain themselves and actually utilize their troops effectively on the ground to take over certain objectives instead of just literally blasting troops in, not really bothering where you place them, not really thinking strategically about it, you know, taking the losses on the chin and not really worrying about future losses. What they're doing now is they're actually, you know, understanding that you can't do things World War II style. You have actually got to follow a certain military doctrine. Granted, that's going to take a long time for them to get up to speed with current NATO military doctrine, okay, which Ukraine is really thoroughly ingrained in that way of fighting now, okay? Hard to fight NATO's way of doing things, troops, all right? It just is. We're the best at it, and we have been for a long time. America and Great Britain were at the forefront of that type of conventional war fighting. France and Germany as well. So it works, and it works for a reason. How long is it going to take for Russia to be able to get to that standard? I don't think they're going to get to that standard in this war. I don't think they'll get to that standard in the next war. This is a multiple generational thing where you're going to have to take a lot of hard hits. You're going to have to lose a lot of things. You're going to have to go through economic and social struggles to get to the point of where you actually adopt a better way of fighting. Doctrine-wise, that's going to take at least 50 years in my guess, guys. And then, guess what? We who've been following the old way of doing things for a long time, the best way of doing things, are also going to progress. So it's something that I always see Russia, unfortunately, unless something drastic happens, always lagging behind with, guys, all right? Make of that as you wish. Now, Russian forces operating in and near the Luhansk Oblast front line are drawing almost entirely from the Western Military District, with a few reinforcements from other force groupings. The disposition suggests that Russian Military Command has returned to the traditional Military District Command and control structure, wherein all units in a discrete geographical area fall under the area of responsibility of a single military district. So I guess what they're talking about there is they're not disfracturing their troops everywhere, being under certain commands, not knowing really where they are. They're taking some form of leadership and ownership of troops on the ground, division-wise, and accounting for them, all right? That's a big thing, accountability. Russia has struggled with that over the past few months, guys, to say the least. Now, two full WND divisions, the 144th Motorized Rifle Division and the 3rd Motorized Rifle Division, have each deployed their maneuver regiments in line, allowing the division commanders to operate as divisions are designed to. All right, important that, listen to that, as they are designed to, insinuating the fact that they haven't been doing what they've been designed to be doing over the past few months. In the earlier part of the war, certainly. These regiments have been reconstituted with mobilized personnel, indicating that the Russian commanders using mobilized soldiers as replacements in doctrine structures instead of creating ad hoc formations. Ad hoc formations can be great, guys, okay? Listen to this. Ad hoc formations can be great, but there's one thing that you need to remember with ad hoc formations. They might not have had time to be able to integrate effectively into the battlefield, and yes, can you be effective with a weapon system and a mechanized vehicle that you're in in? Of course you can, all right? These are trained guys, but, you know, these ad hoc formations means that certain parts, certain elements to that formation may be new to a lot of the guys, if not all of the guys. So a lack of experience within certain areas in the military, operationally speaking, really does show up in the battlefield, okay? It's not something that you can quickly test and adjust to. You have to be a fantastic professional soldier capable of doing that. This is special forces level stuff. This is, you know, US Green Beret type stuff. This is SES, SBS type stuff. Being able to think extremely quickly on your feet and adapt to new situations and work extremely well to that new situation. This is not the average soldier's capability, all right? And that's not dissing average soldiers. That's just the way it is, guys, all right? Ad hoc formations, yeah, they'll work out if you need them to work out short term, but long term ad hoc formations, yeah, I would say no against. Doctrinal structures are the important way. If you're mechanized and you're trained to be mechanized, be mechanized, all right? If you're infantier and you're trained to be infantier, be infantier. There's no point trying to put people and pull them from random outfits because of losses of people on the battlefield to try and make these these doctrinal structures and ad hoc formations. It's just not going to work long term, guys. Does that make sense? Hopefully that clears it up. Now, Russian forces have deployed throughout this war in various non-standard and non-doctrinal structures. We've talked about this, guys. We spoke about this before, starting with the battalion tactical group, but encompassing also volunteering regiments. BAR's National Combat Reserve Unit and militia units belong to Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics, DNR, LNR, respectively. To say nothing of the Wagner private military company formations of convicts. Crazy, but this is actually what we're dealing with now, guys. Now, don't be surprised if you've got some guy charging towards you on the battlefield in Ukraine who's, you know, getting out of jail on a 20-year stretch for murder. And that's what's happening. That's what we're seeing on the ground. Now, the return to doctrinal structures represents an inflection in the Russian force structure and campaign design. An ISW has previously assessed the Russian Ministry of Defense is currently engaging in a number of reforms meant to formalize and professionalize the Russian armed forces and prepare to fight a protracted war in Ukraine as a conventional army. Honestly, guys, listen to this. Too little, too late. Is it going to have a short-term effect? Yes, when we see the reinforcements pushed into the battle zone, as we've spoke about a few moments ago, we're going to see that working out to a degree. Anything better than what they're currently doing is going to work out. Does that make sense? But too little, too late. Again, this is a generational thing. These conventional military formations and formalizations are not going to be, you can implement them straight away, yes, but the ability to cement yourself in that professionalized formation and zone is going to take generations to be able to really get to grips with, because again, throughout the ages we've seen Russia fighting the old-fashioned way, the long way, the hard way for a long time. So it's not just a matter of Great Britain or America, for instance, trying out something else on the battlefield, which we do from time to time. And being semi-successful at it, because we followed the conventional way of war fighting, the better way in my eyes, for a long time. So integrating that into our military is going to be a lot easier than, for instance, Russia, who's, you know, it's not really that good, if I'm being honest with you. That's going to be a lot harder for them to integrate and actively be good at, all right? That's one thing I'll say. It's going to take a long time. Now, the current array of forces along the Luhansk Oblast front line likely reflects the ongoing shift in Russian military procedure towards the Russian mod establishment. So we are seeing these changes take effect. How it's going to be effective, how long it's going to be effective, I believe it's going to be a short-term thing, troops, personally. I'd like to hear your thoughts in the comments on that, what I've just said. Now, the Russians are receiving less benefit from the return to normal in military operations than they might have hoped because of the badly degraded conditions of their forces. Key word that, we're going to go back to that in a second. Hold this. Now, they did not leave enough time to train their mobilized reservists to standards sufficient to support large-scale offensive mechanized maneuver warfare. Russia, effectively, when they invaded Ukraine, thought this was going to be a walk in the park. and effectively a similar situation to Crimea. All right, not too similar, but similar. All right. Now they were drastically wrong. They didn't realize that NATO was going to indirectly support Ukraine as much as they did, and that's the thing that's haltering their advances and making it really, really difficult. So the fact that they didn't even decide to consider during the planning phase the fact that they might need to have reservists, mobilized reservists, trained up and ready to go, just shows how poor the planning was for this military operation that they said. It's been terrible from the start. The thought pattern, the planning, all of that, the execution was really, really terrible. So yeah, in terms of normal in military operations, return to normal, it never was normal from the start, guys. That's my point. Now, ISW has repeatedly observed, and they clearly lack the equipment necessary to kit out their reconstituted units. So even if they are putting forward reservist capability units into these newly formalized military doctrine, tick in the box type units, they're not going to be kit and equipment. They're not going to be kitted out effectively enough to be able to withstand the rigors of war. Certainly not the war that they're currently fighting, guys. So again, when I say short term, I really do mean short term. It's going to be effective for a period of time, but not so much longer. Now, the coherent 3rd and 144th Motorized Rifle Divisions attacking on the Luhansk Oblast axis have thus made relatively few gains since the offensive began. We see this on the map, guys. Let's have a look at this, actually. So here we go. In terms of actual movement, and we're going to check out this updated situation in the Forest Kremnina. So what's going on, Kremnina? All right, let's have a look here. Let's just date ourselves out a little bit. Actually, where has the date thing gone? Here we go. So zooming back. Yeah, January we've seen a little bit of push. Nothing too much at all. You see them pushing forward into these areas near Zarichny. Now, what is key in these areas? We've got a settlement of somewhat here, seems to be taken by Russia. We've just got fields, guys, farming and stuff. Not a lot of infrastructure here. Now, Zarichny and Torsk, yeah, they seem to be pushing towards this. We've got a main feature in Evnikivka. These areas are full to the brim of greenery, strategically valuable in the sense of they can control a lot of land, invaluable in the sense of you're dominating nothing really, okay? There's little settlements, Bilarivka, let's go down here. You've got major, you haven't really got too many majors, all right? Seversk is bigger, Zvenivka is bigger, and you can see that this area here is pretty dormant, all right? This has been the same for a long time, guys. We can go down here till we know where we're at. This is, nothing much has happened too much. We've got Donetsk. It's just conventional war fighting, but it's difficult for anyone to make any real gains. So it's one of those. How long is this going to go on for? Probably is a long time. We've got Bakhmut there. Still, I originally thought that Russia was going to see a lot of momentum. I honestly thought that they would have took Ivanisk by now, but it doesn't seem to be the case, troops. Okay. It didn't seem to be the case at all. It seems to be just lying dormant on this front line here. Effectively, there's just fields there, guys. Now, if we look at this area in particular, Ivanisk is an obvious area that they would want to try and take. Why? Because look what's to the right of it, okay? They already have control and domination on the eastern side of Bakhmut, southern side of Bakhmut, and, you know, to a degree, the northern side as well. Let's have a look north slightly. You can see that they're pushing through. Yahidne is a village/settlement. Yeah, they are moving close to Bakhmut in that circumstance, guys. But yeah, I honestly thought there'd be a lot more movement. Ukraine needs to be careful of this northern flank, though. Northern flank, southern flank, I honestly thought would see a lot more traction, certainly in Ivanisk at this moment in time. This is the key to taking Bakhmut, in my humble opinion. If Russia takes this area, then they push on through to Bakhmut, having already dominated the northeast and southern flanks. This shouldn't be, I say it shouldn't be too difficult. It's a massive, massive area. It would require all of those reservist troops that we've just spoken about, would require them to be kitted out effectively, which we know they won't be. So Bakhmut is going to be continuing to be a meat grinder for the foreseeable, guys, and that's just the way I see it personally. But troops, I want to know from you guys in the chat what you think. Let me know, troops, and if you want to see more updates of this nature, please consider letting me know in the comments section below. And yeah, I'd like to hear from you guys. But thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one, troops. Take it easy and stay safe.